Why did he use the handlebars? He should have just rode it like a skateboard. He wouldn't have fell that way. Anyways, though, while that was in Tampa, Baker probably isn't trying to be doing that. He's trying to go earn himself a contract. And, I mean, we're going to see if he actually can. So, yeah, let's get this thing going. And with that, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fun NFL. Please like and subscribe. Hope y'all are ready for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is, again, a team that I'm very, very stoked to go through. They obviously have a very, very talented roster. It's kind of a change of pace for a division that usually doesn't give me this, as again, the offseason short for the Bucs might have told y'all. But anyways, again, if you have not watched past roster grids, go check out the Jaguars one. First timestamp there as the intro that's going. That'll tell you all you guys need to know how the series works. But if you're just here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you can figure out as we go here. Anyways, without further ado, we're going to get into what's going on with this Bucs quarterback room. Again, very peculiar situation with Baker Mayfield and the contract extension. Again, you probably heard it a million times over social media at some point. But again, obviously, there's a very high likelihood he will be going into the season without a contract. And again, at least it's not MLB, so he's not going to be going through the entire offseason without a contract. But it looks very likely that they're either going to get burned because he's going to be getting like $60 million next offseason if they want to keep him, or I don't know, he plays the same way and they'll probably pay him $50. So yeah, Baker, what are you now? 31 years old. You probably have at least one long-term contract left in you, and I hope you do win MVP or something because you deserve that money. You have been one of the more consistent quarterbacks in football over the past couple of years. Of course, postseason success isn't completely translated there. Again, that's kind of eluded him, I'll probably say, but still, he's a really solid quarterback. We'll get into him actually and how this offense is going to fit this season in a little bit. First, though, we'll talk about these backups. Jalen Daniels, I'm not even going to lie, guys, might be their backup quarterback this year. Yes, he's a UDFA, and yes, he's not really a very even okay passer, but he's by far the most athletic and dynamic guy they have here. He's honestly very, very solid in terms of anticipation over the middle of the field, which, again, is a huge thing in this offense. Also, his deep ball isn't bad. Biggest problem with him is, though, last year he was much more of kind of rhythm thrower in this offense, especially with, you can see with Baker. It's very, very hard to kind of become a reality for him. Again, he obviously, it was 6 years at Kansas, pretty ridiculous. But he is a guy that is very consistent. Obviously, running the ball, that's kind of where he shines as well. Again, most athletic quarterback in this room for sure, other than Baker. But he's obviously, again, definitely the least backed up thrower. Still, though, I do think I think he'll turn some heads in training camp. And we'll see what happens, obviously, with the preseason. Connor Baslick, I have no idea who this guy is. I'm just going to be completely honest, guys. He was there during the preseason last year, and obviously he started Bowling Green for 2 years. Again, there's really not much to talk about here. Him and Fairhill Fan had a really good connection. He's definitely a guy that is solid at reading kind of these zone sort of looks. But I haven't watched a ton of his tape recently, so I couldn't get you guys too much. I'll definitely be watching in preseason, though, because him and Jalen Daniels will definitely be duking out for a roster spot. Second string quarterback is Jake Browning, who, again, is a guy that in the past looked really good. Obviously, that 1 year started with the Bengals in 2023, where he showed really solid arm strength and was a guy that was a high potential thrower for them, despite some turnover issues. Looked really solid. 2024, obviously, didn't really get much playing time with with Joe Burrow being healthy. Then last year, he was absolutely abysmal with the Bengals. He did earn himself a contract, though, here. I'm not going to lie, guys. He just, again, even though he had some big plays in that offense, he again, put that ball in jeopardy so many times, and he took a lot of sacks, too. Well, he went to only 9 sacks, yes, but, again, he simply put with absolutely dog shit last year. Again, like Drake Browning, again, I'm not confident in his backup capabilities, especially after last year. He put that team in some bad situations. Despite, again, he did throw some bombs too. Don't get that confused there. All right, Baker. We kind of already went through him, but Baker last year kind of had a middle-of-the-road season. I think it was a little bit better than 2023, but still not quite as productive as 2024. Again, the turnovers were down, which I guess is decent, too. Biggest problem with Baker is, though, he gets a little bit unhinged, and he's not athletically superior enough to kind of fit some of those throws in that he's overconfidently trying to make. Still, though, this is a guy that, without Mike Evans for most of last year, it was a huge reason that Bucs offense was even remotely productive. But if you look at his game long, especially after that 6-2 start, it definitely was a little bit of a downtick. He was really good against the Patriots, albeit some of that was garbage time. Really good against Patriots that week. The Bills game, I mean, he was okay, I guess. I'm not going to lie, his tape in that game kind of wasn't that impressive. Rams game, he wasn't even healthy for, and they got absolutely steamrolled. Cardinals game was really his last semi-productive game overall. Then obviously the last couple games of the season, especially that Panthers game, that really frustrated me in terms of how he played. So kind of an inconsistent year overall. Baker is still a guy that is roaming around that top 10 quarterback range. It's just the fact that he is a very confident, very aggressive passer, and he reads the field really well. But He doesn't quite have those physical capabilities I think a lot of people think he does have just because of who he is. That kind of puts him in spots where he either, again, underthrows the ball, overthrows the ball, just stuff like that. Baker's still a guy, again, a lot of teams would love to have. For me, I'm going to give him a B+, though. I think that is a fair assessment of him. Again, is that 50 million sort of mark? I don't really think so, but still, he's a very solid quarterback for this offense. Again, ceiling-wise, I don't think he's honestly completely hit it yet, which might sound crazy, but he did just throw 41 touchdowns 2 years ago. Now let's look at who he's going to be throwing to, and hopefully Bucky Irving's going to stay healthy this year. Okay, guys, and now moving into this Bucs the skill positions. I don't know why I said receiver core first, but this is an absolutely loaded group overall. Again, obviously there's definitely some depth issues. I'll just go to address the elephant in the room, but still, this is a group that is going to be very, very explosive this season. Obviously, Bucky Irving's starting running back. Last year, he low-key was dog shit. I'm just not going to lie, at least statistically. He had some decent games toward the end of the season, but again, overall, he wasn't really healthy at all. And outside of getting a couple explosive runs here and there, he really didn't look in rhythm at all. And most of his success as a rookie, really just being a decisive runner, really just weren't there last year. As a receiver, though, I think he was just as productive as he was in 2024, if not even more productive. So watch out to be an even bigger part of his game, and the versatility was a huge part of that. Anyways, though, again, if you look at his season last year, just week to week, obviously he didn't start the year too great, and then again, he had the big injury. After the Eagles game, that's what I'm remembering. And again, like I said, at the end of the season, he had some decent games in terms of, again, yardage-wise. But again, like I said, he never really got on quite to the same level. Still, though, I don't think that Bucs interior, that offensive line, really was even respectable as a run-blocking unit last year. They just did not create the same holes they did last year. I just think part of that was the zone blocking, which was a huge pressing thing they tried to do last year, which, again, just really never, turned into much. Still, I do expect Bucky Irving to have a bounce-back year, and hopefully he does stay healthy. He obviously was one of the most explosive and bright rookies 2 years ago. Kenny Gainwell, what the hell? He's their backup. He was legitimately the only, I guess Jalen Warren was okay, but he was really the only consistent guy on that Steelers team. Also, if I'm not mistaken, he led them in receptions. What the hell? But yeah, he was heavily used last year. First, 1,000-yard scrimmage season of his career, which is good for him. Again, he was very, very good last year. He had a lot of runs out of shotgun. Not really easy things to do, but very, very good at hesitating in the backfield to an extent to where he isn't really putting himself in a spot where he's going to just get blown up every play, but he still broke tackles out of those, which, again, is what you need to do to, again, be successful back when you don't hesitate back there. But, again, he was really, hesitating to a lane, which he was very patient, probably the best way to put it overall. But again, hesitation was the name of the game with Kenny Gainwell last year, and it was a very successful season. So, while many people are like, is he a good backup? Last year, I think he proved it. Sean Tucker, this is a dude that had that one monster game versus the Bucs last year, or not the Bills, my bad. He had 3 touchdowns. Again, a bunch of explosive plays. Outside of that, he really didn't get a ton of run last year. For me, I think he's a guy that could be a solid backup running back. The problem with him is he is a very straight line runner, and he doesn't really have that dynamic trait really at all, other than I guess being a pretty intelligent guy in terms of pass blocking. He's not quite a great guy, but still, Sean Tucker's a really good depth piece for them. Again, he's probably one of the better third backs in the league, despite not really having any innate trait there. You have Josh Williams. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I don't know who the hell this dude is, so we'll see what happens. For me, though, this running back from Mosey is B. I want to give it a B+, but Kenny Gainwell is an average starter, I think, at best, and that's pushing it. And obviously, he's not a high usage guy. Bucky Irving's coming off a bad season. I'm going to stick it at a B. And again, Sean Tucker's there. I want to give it a B. You know what? I'm going to give it a B+. Bucky Irving's too good for that. And again, if Bucky Irving had even a remotely solid season last year, it would be around an A tier. But the problem is, it's just, again, I'm going to give it a B+ just because of the ceiling. And even then, you're going to have solid production from your running backs this year, even though Bucky Irving obviously had a struggling season last year, which, again, is really the only thing that's pushing me towards a B. But I'm going to stick it at a B+ there. Now we move into this receiving core. This is a group that I think is in a very critical situation because, again, they lose Mike Evans, who, again, after, tying Jerry Rice for the most 1,000-yard seasons in a row, obviously most 1,000-yard seasons to start a career. Injuries plagued the season last year. Really wasn't that much of a presence in this offense really at all. And then, obviously, they missed the playoffs. They didn't really get a playoff run with them. And now it's going to be Emeka Egbuka's offense in terms of him being an X receiver. Emeka last year, I think if there's anyone who's denying what the rookie wall is, I think Emeka is the perfect example of why that is not true at all. Emeka Egbuka, after a 163-yard outburst for the Seahawks in Week 5, really never got back on track. He was okay against the Patriots, but I really think that was just because, I'm not going to lie, he faced a lot of zone in that game. When he was faced physical man coverage the rest of the season, he really struggled. I just don't think his route variations were really put into a spot where he could succeed. That was the biggest reason why. And also his separation rate fell off a cliff. So while Emeka's a guy that, again, obviously at times that really last year looked like an elite receiver, again, he had some rookie struggles. I really think the released package also can use some work, but still, he's a guy that has he's very solid route runner, and I think him just being a little bit more explosive at times will be a huge part of this offense being really good. But again, he obviously hit a wall last year for sure. All right, Chris Godwin, he's their obviously their like consistency machine here. He only played 9 games last year. Really, the past few years he hasn't really been healthy. Now, what is he? 30? Yeah, he's 30 years old. He'll be in the slot a lot. I still think though, as a Z, he can be very productive. Biggest problem I think that I've seen from Chris Godwin the past couple years is yak production has definitely gone down a little bit. And in the red zone, while he's never really been a good player, it hasn't really even been quite respectable. Again, in terms of the metrics there, and even on tape, he's just not as, again, decisive there. Still, though, Chris Godwin's going to be a huge part of this offense. We all know that. Jalen McMillan, he's going to be their, most likely going to be their slot receiver at times. Last year, while he only played 4 games, he went absolutely off. Again, as a rookie, while he caught 8 touchdowns, it was kind of an up and down season. He really never had a consistent game. Again, last year when he played, obviously, with the injuries in mind, towards the end of the season, again, 114 yards, 7 catches. He was really good in that Dolphins game, again, despite them losing. Jalen Millen, I expect to have a really solid season. Again, at least 700 yards from him. He'll be a really big part of this offense. I think that he is a very underrated guy. And, he's going under the radar for, going into this season. Then you have Ted Hurst out of Georgia State. This dude's a beast. The problem with me is I just haven't really seen him go against even a remotely respectable corner last year. And I think a lot of his routes were basically him just kind of creating his own thing, especially vertically, which is a good thing. He's a deep threat for sure. But again, the yak yardage remains to be seen. Also, I haven't really seen him run a true good slant yet. It's been mostly hitches. So, Ted Hurst, I'd like to see more of your route tree. I'll be watching a lot of you in preseason, but from what I know, you are a really solid player. It's just, again, it's kind of hard to grade a guy that hasn't really gone against competition and at times, hasn't really shown those measurables to be, again, to a really high extent, which is where guys like him, can go in like the second round instead of like the third. That was a little bit of a reach for me. He wasn't one of my top 15 guys, but still, Ted Hurst is a solid player. Tez Johnson, who's similar to Emeka Buka, kind of hit a wall last year. He obviously had that amazing game against the Niners. Again, even the Lions game, he was good. That was the score, whatever. After that, it was kind of a mess. He is obviously a yak merchant underneath. That's what he's going to do. He's a very, very similar to Wanner Robinson. I don't want to say that, but they're like the exact same player. He's a little faster, though. I think, though, if Tez can be just a little bit more respectable in terms of him being a vertical threat, I think that would be a huge way for him to, kind of incorporate himself in the slot. Then you even have Cameron Johnson. This guy's not a guy to scoff at either. While he doesn't really get on the field much, he is a guy that can consistently beat press, and I think there is something in the NFL for that, and he's also a good special teamer. David Sills, I'm not going to lie, I don't even know who the hell that is, but they do have a really good top 6. I think it's one of the more deeper receiving cores in football. For me, I'm going to give this group an A-. That might be a little bit too rich for some people just because, let's be honest, Chris Godwin hasn't been healthy in 3 years. Or, 3 years, yeah. Emeka Buka, is he a true number 1? We don't really know yet. Jalen McMillan also hasn't really been healthy in 2 years. And then, again, obviously the depth there is a little bit, we don't know about them, but I think very highly of them. So that might be just me projecting there, but I really love this receiving core. Again, I think it's going to be one of the better ones in the football. And then we'll go to tight end. Obviously, Kate Otton's a very good player. Last year, highly productive season. Only thing was that, I guess, in the red zone, he really wasn't used a ton. From what I remember, maybe he got like 12 targets. It was kind of ridiculous. But obviously, yak threat for sure. Over the middle of the field, just on those crossing routes, it's very, very hard to deal with him because he's a very solid blocker. Kate Otton's going to be their starter for as long as he wants. He's a very, very good player. Then obviously you have Payne Durham as his backup. He is legitimately just out there a block. He doesn't even get to the second level that well. He just isolates really well. So, yeah, there's not really much else to talk about there. It's kind of a casual take, but I mean, if you just watch Payne Durham play, he's out there to block. Keefe, I think he played. No, he didn't play last year. Did he get injured? I don't even know what happened. In the past, he's been their primary blocking tight end. I guess that wasn't the case last year. I'm not going to lie. I haven't seen this dude play in a while, so we'll see kind of what happens there, but I do expect him to get in the field at least at some point. And you got Bauer Sharp at LSU. He is an absolute chud. I think he had 8 catches last year at LSU. It was something ridiculous. No, he had 24, but still, this is not a guy that you really look at to be much of a threat at all. Again, he's not even a solid blocker. I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know why they drafted him. But anyways, this tight end room, while there's not a ton of depth in terms of receiving options, Kate Otton's obviously a really legit dude. I'm gonna say a B. You could argue it's higher. I'm gonna say it a B. Kate Otton, I don't think is this overly elite player, but he's still really solid. I just don't think there's not a ton of depth in terms of receiving options, which is kind of the wary thing for me. You could argue it's a B+. I wouldn't really be mad if you said, we're gonna give it a B+. I'm not going to say I'm being generous because, again, Kate Otton, I think he's good enough to deserve that. All right, now let's look at this offensive line. Okay, guys, now for this Bucs offensive line, we'll go to the overall offensive grade after this. Again, it's definitely a group that last year I think is looking to bounce back this season. Again, they've had major injury issues with certain guys in the past. Tristan Wirfs, again, like I said, I addressed this with Peneso yesterday. If Panay Sewell is not the most athletic tackle in football. It's Tristan Wirfs or what is it called, Trent Williams. But Tristan Wirfs is an absolute anomaly there. He's 320, but I mean he just anchors so well. It's impossible to get by him. I'm not gonna lie. I think he may have gave like 8 pressures last year. It was ridiculous. Tristan Wirfs is an absolute monster. Benjamin Chukwuoma is his backup. This guy has really bad technique, but he's another guy that it's just very hard to get by. And he is a run blocker. He completely like blows plays up. So good for him there. Ben Bredesen, he's kind of just an average center, or not a center guard. He's obviously had some major injury issues in the past. I'm really looking at the Giants' years there. But again, since coming to the Bucs, he's been a solid player for them. The only issue is that, again, it is a run blocker. He isn't even remotely respectable. But again, he's a very consistent pass blocker, and him and Baker have a really good rapport. So there's something to be said about his play. But still, I need to see him at least be somewhat decent or just impactful in terms of penetrating before he gets beat. Because a guy like Bucky Irving needs a guy like that to be, at least somewhat of a plus, or even just average as a run blocker. Elijah Klein, I haven't seen really much of you play. All I know is you get beat a lot. That's what I've seen on tape. Graham Barton, after I think a little bit of an overhyped rookie season, I think a lot of people like this guy was really good. He low-key sucked last year. I'm a guy that I wasn't the biggest fan of him coming out. I think that you look at a guy like JPJ, who still hasn't really played that well. I mean, you look at the Raiders' offensive line right now, and you're like, yeah. Well, Jackson Powers-Johnson, I think, is a better player than Graham Barton coming out of the draft. A lot of people weren't going to agree with that. He was a first-round pick. I'm like, I don't love that. But still, rookie season was overall solid. I think it was a little overhyped. Last year, though, he low-key sucked. And I'll be honest, guys, I don't really like when this happens where, again, a guy either is really successful going to the league or people are really hyping him going into the league, and I'm not on that side of the fence with him. And then, again, he struggles. I'm like, that kind of, like, I want everyone to be able to play well, even if I'm right about what ends up happening. Kyrie Elam. But, and he's training miss. But anyways, yeah, I hope Graham Barton bounces back this year because I really think he needs. He deserves that. As a run blocker, though, after a really nice rookie season there, he really he struggled in isolation. In terms of pass blocking, I'm gonna be honest, guys, he couldn't handle power last year. That was the biggest problem. So again, I think him resetting, anchoring better, and really making it hard for those guys to land those first punches will make it a lot easier for him to have success. Still, though, in terms of like agility, lateral movements, he looked pretty good last year. Ben Scott, I guess, bro, what are we doing? Dan Feeney's played in the past, but he sucks. Cody Mock, I can pronounce his name. Did he even play last year? I'm not going to lie. Am I getting bamboozled? Legitimately, he played last year, right? Or am I tweaking? Yo, he didn't. He played 2 games. Yeah, he got injured last year. What am I talking about? Yeah. Cody Mock didn't play last year. The first 2 years, he was really solid. He's a really tenacious run defender. I'm trying to separate this from what he actually is, but he's a really good run defender. Very similar approach to Quinn Miners. I don't want to say it I'm not saying they look similar. They just, again, very similar approach. As a pass blocking, he's never really been even quite respectable at all, but honestly, I don't really care. He's a good enough run defender to kind of chill there. Dan Feeney, again, like I said, he sucks. He's kind of just there. Justin Scholes is a solid backup tackle. Luke Gedeke has some major injuries in the past, but he's a very good tackle. Again, just overall, super dependable other than the injuries. For me, this offensive line is kind of a mishmash. Again, you have a struggling Graham Barton, a decent Ben Bredesen, imbalanced Cody Mock, and 2 really good tackles. I'm probably going to say it's going to be a B. You could argue it's a B-. I'm going to say it's a B-. They really didn't perform up to where they should have last year. That's why I'm going to stick them there, but it's still a group that I like a lot. 45, 27, 30, 18, and 14. That's going to be 134 points for this offense. That's going to put them in the B-plus tier, which is where they belong. They're not quite A tier. They don't have that talent overall and just the depth. And I think that the offensive line could definitely use a little bit of work. But still, bounce back here from the offensive line. Same thing with Bucky Irving. The chip on the shoulder that Baker always says is actually a chip. Again, this offense should be perform well up here. That's where they should be playing. We'll just have to see what happens. Now, let's look at this defense, which also had some movement. All right, we're going to address the front 7 first of this Bucs defense, and thank God we have another 3-4. I love these 3-4 defenses. Hats off to that. All right, we'll go to the linebackers, then we'll talk about the D-line, then we'll talk about Ruben Bain in this edge rushing group, and I'm telling you right now, Ruben Bain is the #1 guy going into the season. If you think otherwise, you are high. Anyways, though, linebacker, they brought in Alex Anzalone, who's a very good player. He's obviously been a very dependable blitzer throughout his career. The pressure rate's been through the roof the past couple of years. He's never really been quite great in coverage. He's always been better in zone. I will say that, again, if there's something to say there. And, man, he's always been exposed at times. Still, though, in terms of over the middle of the field, he's gotten much improved, which is huge. And his instinctiveness against the run and really his ability to climb up the field is – there's really nothing else to say. He's just really good at it, and he makes a lot of plays off of that. Alex Anzalone is a very good player, even at 31. This is a huge acquisition for them, replacing Levante David, who obviously retired. Then you have Christian Roseman, who's an athletic linebacker here. He's very, very versatile in what you can do with him, especially over the not even over the middle of the field. I'm going to say as a sub guy, but I think he's better as a will because he's in a position where he can, I wouldn't say rush passer, but be kind of more of in line with some of these D linemen. And that makes it a lot easier for him to kind of climb up the field. Still, though, if you look at his struggles in 2024, it was mostly because of the fact that he wasn't really anticipating, and while that was a big difference in 2025, the aggression, I still think took a little bit of a drop. Still, though, Christian Mo's been really solid guy you have there. It'll be interesting to see if he holds down the starting spot. Josiah Trotter, this guy out of Missouri that a lot of people like a lot. I didn't think he was quite this good just because his tackling technique just had a little bit of like weird things going on for me. And also, he's not really a naturally instinctive guy, which a lot of people are like, what are you talking about against the run? He was just always sniffing plays out, which is fair, but I think he kind of over-anticipated it sometimes, and it wasn't just him being, that dude. Still, though, Josiah Trotter's a really good player. I expect him to challenge toward a starting spot at some point. Then, maybe not. That's not how he evaluated him. Then you have Dennis. This guy can't tackle. This guy can't cover. I'm not going to lie. I don't really know why he started last year. Other than that, though, you got a bunch of brandos. They're not. We'll just be fighting for a preseason spot, to be honest with you guys. For me, this linebacking core is in a really good spot. I'm gonna say it's a B. You could argue it's a B plus because Alex Anzalone does deserve that, but I don't really think Christian Roseman is really anything better than an average player overall. And the depth is good though, so you could definitely push for a B plus. But I'm gonna say a B for now. That's gonna be 9, 18, and 24 points at linebacker. Now we move to the defensive line. This is a group that is gonna be very, very good. Obviously, Kalijah Cansey is in a weird spot right now, but Elijah Roberts last year was absolutely gross. While he's not exactly my favorite pass rusher, he's so good in terms of dominating leverage and making it so hard for an offensive line to kind of create any sort of hole on his side of the ball. That's kind of why he's going to be out there. Still, though, it's going to be interesting to see how he plays in training camp because he's just simply not as good as Kalijah Cansey. But as a run defender, there is something to be warranted there. Now for Kalijah Cansey, last year, obviously, the injury was a huge issue. But again, he's one of the more talented pass rushing defensive tackles in football. He's still not really been even okay as a run defender. You could argue he's even worse than Brian Breezy, who, again, hopefully he gets better. He just tore his ACL. That's bad. But, again, hopefully good recovery there. But yeah, Kalijah Cansey, again, he's a guy who's one of the better interior pass rushers in football. Again, he's just got a really good pin pull swim move, and again, just the shedding is like it's quite good. And obviously, he's got power to it at times. So yeah, Kalijah Cansey, expect him to be on the field a lot in third down. He's gonna be the 3 tech, even kick him out to 5 tech there, even 4I. Again, Kalijah Cansey's he's one of those guys you got to watch out there. I just hope that this season, after again being 19th overall a couple years ago, for him to really put it together this season, because that would be nice. Again, he didn't play it all last year. The injury though was definitely worrisome. I don't know if he'll be completely ready to go to start the season. Then you got Vita Vea, who obviously is holding out the contract issue. He's been one of the better nose tackles in football for really his entire career. He's now at 31. There's really no change in his game. He's been the same player the past 4 years. I guess the only real variation is last year he wasn't getting off blocks quite as well, but honestly I don't really care. It's Vita Vea. He's gonna be moving dudes left and right. Elijah Sims is his backup. He didn't really get to play last year. All I know is he snuffs out guys. Good. Yeah. I didn't watch much of his tape, not gonna lie. Ashawn Robinson, he's a vet, as y'all know. This is a dude that's kind of been the same player, similar to Vita Vea for a while now. I will say, though, as a pass rush guy, definitely seen an uptick in production the past couple years. Last year, I think there were a lot more double teams on him, which kind of made it harder for him to be effective. But as a run defender, still is really, really good. He's not a guy that's going to be, he'll definitely sacrifice leverage to be a more impactful player, which I'm not the biggest fan of. But in terms of what we saw last year, that Panthers run defense, which was much improved, I'm not really going to lie, it worked. Raheem Muniz-Roches. This dude is bad. I'm not going to lie, guys. He sucks. He's never even been okay as a run defender. He gets moved just way too consistently, even washed out at times. As a pass rusher, yes, you're going to get some power out of him, but honestly, it's not really going to be enough to be on the field too much. But honestly, again, he's a guy that I guess can be a flash in the pan here and there. This D-line for me is a lot of kind of mishmash, and there's definitely a lot of good things going on, but obviously the Vita Vea contract issue is definitely something to look out for. But for me, I'm going to give this D-line a B+. There's a lot of potential. I think Elijah Roberts is a really solid player. You get probably solid production at Ashawn Robinson. Vita Vea, again, arguably the best nose tackle in football. Kalijah Cansey, if he puts it all together this year, will be one of the better interior guys off the pass rushers in the league. Just keep that in mind. But for me, I think a B+ might be a little bit overzealous, but I'm confident in giving them that grade. All right, pass rush now as a whole. Ruben Bain, they drafted him, 15th overall, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's the best pass rusher in this year's draft. Short arm, my ass. This dude's an absolute monster. He has 4 or 5 moves that work so well. Obviously, his speed to power is his number one, is his bread and butter. Again, really good first step. Second step could use a little bit of work at times. Still really, really good, though. And he gets into your grill every single snap. And he's also a tenacious run defender, which is a huge understatement of his game. Ruben Bain, I'm not going to act like he's going to be this 15 sack guy as a rookie, but expect him to be up there in terms of pressures. I think there's no reason to think that he can't have a Jared Verse rookie season if he really puts it together. Hopefully he has more sacks and pressures a little bit down. So kind of Make it a little reasonable, but I think the world of Ruben Bain. You have Yaya Diaby on the other side. This is a guy that has been a consistent pressure guy for them. Again, the sack numbers haven't completely got there. He's so good at it with his bend off the edge. He doesn't really have much of an inside counter, which is kind of why he gets stalled at times. He's not a true number one guy, but trust me, Yaya Diaby is a really good player and expect him to have another productive season. I need to see this guy translate more sacks, though, because he gets way too much pressure to not getting translate more. Or put it together. Anthony Nelson, really solid depth dude. He has very, very good technique. The only issue in his game is that he doesn't really have that burst off the line, which makes it harder at times to kind of gain that first step for power. But his speed moves work really, really well, and I think that he's definitely more of a finesse guy than he was in the past couple years, but really good playmaker. Watch out for him. Alquan Muhammad, I didn't realize he had 11 sacks in Detroit last year. That was definitely a bizarre number. His pressure rate didn't really translate that. I'm looking at Bryce Huff back in that's not even true because Bryce Huff from the Jets, he had like a crazy pressure rate. That was not the case with Alquan Muhammad. He's always been an athletic dude. It's always been, can this guy have even remotely respectable pass rush nuance in his game? And it was the case last year. He had a really good inside counter, really good ghost move, and even off of that, he'd have just straight speed, just get by the guy. There's not even a move there. That's his number one move, and it kind of works. So Alquan, I love that. That was your game. Watch out for that dude. Will he have 11 sacks this year? Absolutely not, but he will be getting the field a lot and doing a lot of damage. Chris Braswell, he sucked last year. I'm not going to lie. His pressure rate stalled so bad. As a rookie, the pressure rate definitely was decent, but last year, I'm not gonna lie, he got way too much playing time. This guy, like, what are we doing? He got stalled every single snap. Like, again, that just can't happen. Then Mo Camara, he hasn't played in a while, but I like him. He was good at Colorado. But anyways, this pass rush is really fun. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna give it an A minus. The only reason I can't give it an A is because Vita Vea isn't healthy, and we don't know what's going on with him. Kalijah Kancey coming off that really bad injury. The blitzing is also another big thing. Like, this is probably one of the more high-ceiling pass rushes in football. I legitimately want to give them an A. I love what's going on here, but again, like I said, Ruben Bain, we don't even know. They don't really have a true number one guy right now. That's probably, again, the best thing I could say. But I want to give them an A so bad. This pass rush is ridiculous. That's going to be 12, 24, 36. What is that? 44 points. It's a really good pass rush. You know what? Screw it. We are giving it an A. This pass rush is going to be one of the best in football this year. I'm calling it right now. Anyway, so let's get into the secondary. All right, guys, now let's look at this Bucs secondary, which is a very tenacious and playmaking-based group. I will say last year there were definitely some games where they low-key were dog water. I think that's the best way to put it. There's a reason that Bryce Young, I'm joking. But anyways, we'll start with the cornerbacks, then we'll get into the safeties. Safeties, it's not really too much to talk about. We know who those dudes are. Zion McCollum, last year was really good in man. Just overall, there's not really much bad things to say about them there. He didn't get targeted a lot for a reason. Again, in zone, he definitely was a little bit uncomfortable at times, which I think limited some of his playmaking ability because he definitely could have picked off the pass here and there. But again, just overall on the boundary, it was very, very hard for guys to climb up on him. He never really got stacked consistently, and even in press coverage, he was very, very consistent with his jamming. So give it off to Zion McCollum. He had a really nice season last year. Demarion Williams, my bad. This is a dude that just hasn't really consistently been on the field enough to really say much anything about him. But again, I think he's definitely had a resurgence from what I've heard in training camp. I'm definitely going to be watching a lot of him in preseason. Benjamin Morris on the other side, definitely a rookie ups and downs for sure. He didn't really get a ton of playing time before his injury. This is a dude that I think really needs to be put in a slot where in the slot, but in a spot where he can consistently be able to flip his hips in a way where he doesn't really have to worry about, again, getting completely burned the other way. So I'm thinking like inside leverage is definitely a good idea with him. And then also, again, on the boundary, again, he just tracks the ball so well, which was a good thing from him last year. Benjamin Morrison, we didn't get quite what I wanted out of him last year, but still, he's a guy that you should definitely expect to have a solid season. Josh Hayes, this guy sucks. Just tell me honest, he's burnt toast. 2024, I think he was like the one guy in that Bucs defense you didn't really want to see out there. Last year, didn't really play a ton. There's a reason for it. He didn't really get targeted a ton, which was kind of cool. But yeah, the separation rate was way too high. Then you have, or especially separation per route. Jacob Parrish, he had a lot of good exposure last year as a rookie. He did a really solid job at making it hard for these slot receivers to kind of open up over the middle. Same time, though, against the run, he wasn't really great in terms of his gaps. In the open field, it was kind of like a gamble in terms of what he was going to do. So the playmaking is definitely there. I just don't think Jacob Parrish is completely like decisive enough just yet. Definitely look for that confidence to bump up this offseason. Keontae Scott, 4th round pick out of Miami. He was definitely Miami's best guy in the secondary last year. Biggest problem with him is, though, he just does not have the physicals to, I think, consistently be able to hang with some of these more physical and taller and faster receivers. Still, though, expecting to do really well against some of these twitchier dudes, though, because I think he does have that hip fluidity, and change of direction is definitely there for him. Secondary overall, or not secondary, the quarterback room overall is definitely a little bit of a mishmash of like a guy like McCollum who we like a lot, and then it's like, So for me, I think there's a lot of growth that needs to happen here, but I'm going to say it's going to be a B minus right now. It's not the worst. We'll give it a C plus. As good as Zion McCollum is, I still need to see a lot more from these two younger dudes to really see what's going to happen, because they definitely had their struggles last year. Now for safety, Tyke Smith has really turned himself into a really solid player. He's not even remotely respectable in coverage at times, but as a true box safety and a guy that's going to consistently be a presence over the middle of the field and even, close out in the boundary, he's definitely a hard guy to ignore. Like, Tyke Smith is a really good player. Miles Killebrew, he's a special team demon. I mean, there's not really much else to say there. Obviously, Antoine Winfield Jr., one of the best safeties in football. Kind of a bounce back year. He kind of sucked in 2024 before the injury. Last year, though, again, as a range merchant, to be honest with you guys, it's kind of the best way to put him. He was very, very good, and obviously coming downhill also. Again, especially over the middle of the field. If Edu Melifonwu, expect him to have kind of a bounce back year after kind of not having the greatest year with the Dolphins. Obviously, the injury, which I don't think he really fully recovered from the Lions. Last year, though, this year, expecting to be playing a lot of center field in the dime situations. With that said, though, this safety room is really good. I'm probably going to give it an A minus. You could argue it's a B plus if you really wanted to, but Tyke Smith's a really good player. I think it's one of definitely the stronger parts of this team. That's going to be 30 points, if I'm not mistaken. If we added that all up for this defense, that's going to be 24, 18, 44, 12, and 30. That's going to give them 128 points, which is really solid. That's going to put them in the B tier. I think it's a B plus defense, though, I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of potential with this group. It's just, especially in the secondary, can a guy like Benjamin Morrison turn out to be a really good player, and can Jacob Harris be more consistent? If those two things happen, who really knows where this defense is going? All right, we're going to wrap it up with this special teams unit. Again, before we get into the overall grading stuff, again, BT Potter, I've not heard of this dude in a minute. He played at Clemson last year? No, what the hell happened to this dude? He was nasty at Clemson, I remember that. No, he wasn't nasty. But he was out there. This guy's a really good in-range kicker. I wouldn't put him out there past 50, but, I mean, he's there. Chase McLaughlin's been their kicker for a minute now. Last year he was pretty consistent. There's not really much else to say there. He's been their kicker for a while. The long range was a little bit... No, it wasn't. It was like 40 to 49, right? Yeah. He was looking money last year from out there. He had a 65-yarder. What the Damn, bro. Chase, you're moving. Riley Dixon's an average punter. Cameron Johnson's a really solid punt returner. Kenneth Gainwell is a really good kick returner. Evan Deckers is not a great long snapper. I don't know. This special teams room, there's really not much to talk about there. It's a good group. They have, again, Kyle Miles Killebrew. You're going to be in a good spot. 8 points. Now for the depth. Quarterback depth, I'd give a D. I'm not really that confident at all. Like, I don't think Jake Brown is good at all. Running back depth, I'd give a A minus. You could already, no, we're giving it an A. We're giving it an A. That's probably a C plus, though, so far. Receiver depth, I'd probably give a B. We'll honestly say, screw it. We'll say we're going to say it. Screw it. This is tough. We'll say a B. No, B plus. All right. I still think we're going to see, we'll say a B minus depth. Tight end depth, I'm probably going to say is a C. Again, the fact they don't have any receiving third after that's an issue, but I think, again, Payne Durham's too good of a blocking to kind of ignore that. So, we're going to say we're probably still at a C plus. O-line depth overall is probably a C, so I'm just going to say we're at a C plus overall. Now to the D line, I'll probably give that a B. Yeah, so we're probably up to a B minus. Edge rusher depth, I'd give a A. Yeah, honestly, an A. It's really good. So we're probably going to say, if we're at an A, what is that going to be? A B for the depth? Linebacker depth, I think it's honestly just right in line there, so we're going to say a B so far. Cornerback depth isn't amazing, but I like the safety depth, so I think overall we're probably at a B for the team depth. Now, there's not really one position outside of quarterback where I'm honestly even concerned at all, but again, there's definitely some positions where it's a little bit better and a little bit worse. Still, though, solid depth in this roster overall. That's going to be, 32 points, if I'm not mistaken. Now go to the identity of this football team. Obviously, Todd Bowles is not the greatest of coaches. The only reason he's here is because he's in the NFC South. Again, he's just not a very good coach. We know that. Game decision-wise, just leading this team. Still, though, defensively, this is always going to be a respectable defense because he's their head coach. It's just kind of how it works. Todd Bowles, wherever he goes, he's going to have a solid defense. Let's suggest in 2018. But again, that's just the biggest thing here. Again, it's never a good luck when you have Vita Vea and Baker Mayfield, the two leaders on both sides of the ball. Pissed off because they don't have contracts. Again, it's just not a great look. I think the identity of this team's a little bit flawed. That's why I give them a C. I'm not completely bought into this team, but it's a really solid roster. You have to admit that. So we're going to say 25 points there. I just, again, how far are they going to go with Todd Bowles, their head coach? That's the question to ask. If we got that up, though, it's going to be 134 plus 128 plus 8 for the special teams was 32 and 25. That's going to be 327 points for this roster, which is really freaking good. It's a good it's a really good team, guys. B plus for the roster. It's, again, like I said, a really talented team. I love the potential. It's just the fact that I don't think Todd Bowles is the right guy to man the ship. With that said, that's all I have for y'all here. Hope you guys enjoyed the Bucs roster. Again, probably one of the better rosters in the NFC. Again, we'll see if the Niners can rival it, but the Niners have their own issues, so we'll address that probably tomorrow. But yeah, here's a hint at that. I mean, I kind of already showed you guys it, but yeah. Here's the next team.
Since thrown an incompletion yet, he's 4 for 4. Going to the air again, that pass is high! Oh, what a one-handed grab by Pearsall, and then he took a pop at the 30-yard line. There's a flag for that. Unbelievable catch.
Oh, number one set it up so nice, too. He knew he was going up with one hand the entire time. Little ball was a little high. One jumps up there and snags it. And then gets sandwiched